am not playing the Dead Space Remake. I refuse to. I am absolutely not going to spend a single cent on this piece of shit business model move that everybody is calling the best remake since Resident Evil on the fucking GameCube. I refuse for a second to acknowledge EA's sudden change of grace because they decided to take an IP that's not even theirs and try to market off of you fucking who think that EA has gone for another fucking redemption arc since they released Jedi, what is it, that Star Wars game? I forget. I don't even fucking care. That's not even their fucking IP. Do we have to remind of what IPs that EA killed off over the years, and yet people seem to forget that Dead Space is one of the bigger examples of EA killing off a company that actually made a decent, good number of games? Now, I'm not going to get into the whole Dead Space thing because, you know, the first game was essentially RE4, but better in every single way, and I actually stand by that. It has both action and survival horror blended in very well. Some might find it boring, but whatever, I'm not going to judge you for that. I can understand, but just understand that Dead Space on a technical level is everything that RE4 should have been instead of what came out of Devil May Cry or whatever canceled beta that was RE4. Just for the record, I have been playing RE4 a bit, initially on stream and then off stream because the game design just pissed me off. I don't know why people can call this a fucking masterpiece when it's aged even worse than fucking GoldenEye, but whatever, I'm not gonna get into that either. EA should not be given any attention after the fact that they killed off the initial developers who did make Dead Space. Now, you could say that Dead Space 2 is maybe not as good as Dead Space 1, or that it's the worst in the series, or that people want to look at Dead Space 3 like it was essentially RE6, except at least RE6, at the very least, was just due to in-housing of shitty design, especially with story. But you know what they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But yet, From Software gets a pass every time they release a fucking Souls game. Seriously, Demon's Souls came out in 2008, and yet Elden Ring, their magnum opus of 2022, the one Game of the Year, unfairly by the way, and yet that shit has so many fucking problems, and yet everyone is willing to excuse it because it's From Software. I already did a whole ass video about why I'm not playing Elden Ring, and I guarantee it that somebody's gonna get on my case saying, you shouldn't judge the Dead Space remake because, you know, you didn't play it, and you're making this one video shitting all over it for X amount of minutes. I still stand on Elden Ring. I refuse to play it. That shit is basically Demon's Souls, but open world. It's nothing special. And this Dead Space remake is a bigger sin than remaking Resident Evil 4 because EA not only killed off the original developers of Dead Space, but also other IPs, and then they cashed in just because it's EA and they can never do any wrong, right? But remember, you're not allowed to criticize this game because you didn't play it, so your word holds no law. History will repeat itself as long as people continue to raise their standards to the lowest point of just letting people have fun and saying it's fine 10 out of 10. That's why you people keep getting such mediocre releases and even having to remake older games. And yet, even when something like Medieval does come out, a pretty faithful reimagining of the original, that people only like the original, by the way. They seem to hate too, even though I like it, but whatever. People crapped on that game because it was too faithful. And yet, something like Crash Bandicoot, or Spyro, or The Last of Us, or Resident Evil 4, and now Dead Space are being, or have been remade, and yet people just want to have the stop letting people have fun mentality, stop trying to ruin others' fun, and yet their standards are so fucking low, they will call the Dead Space remake as to how we'll do a remake of a game when it's made by a company that shut down the original developers, and yet they're fucking fooling you, and yet when they do something fucking stupid, you're gonna go back to hating on them, even saying some stupid shit, like saying, I don't want to play the Crash and Spyro remasters anymore. They're gonna cloud my judgment because it's published by Activision, even though they have jack shit to do with those, even then and now. But yeah, these are the people that are gonna tell us that we can wait for this game. You know what I'm talking about, I'm not gonna fucking mention it today. Or that you should just let people have fun and enjoy things, or just say, oh, the game is fine, it's a guilty pleasure of mine, and then you keep giving them your money, and then you get shit like this. I'm tired of this nonsense, dude. I am legit tired of this nonsense. I would rather play Dead Space 2 on the mode where you can only save 3 times than to give a cent to EA, because they want to milk your nostalgia card so fucking hard that it's not even funny. Speaking of really asshole developers, publishers, whatever the fuck, Bethesda had released a game, Hi-Fi Rush or something, and everybody on Twitter was fucking coming in the pants at how great the game is because it's got that Jet Set Radio vibes, and then I think a week later, or even recently, there's a game that Arcane Studios is making that's gonna have online only, and everyone's back to shitting on Bethesda. But remember, you can't blame Bethesda because they're just publishers. And what do they publish? That fucking game that supposedly is made by the same people who did make The Evil Within. Actually, no, not supposedly, they actually made it. Why did their people's perspective on things change, like Thanos snapping the Infinity Gauntlet, just because EA decides to release a game that's made by a different company, and then that game happens to get good reviews because it's not a microtransaction-ridden piece of shit? And then they have the next Star Wars game that I'm assuming is being made by Respawn. I really don't give a shit. They've made Apex, and now they're just greedy, hungry piece of shit for making a free-to-play game. They're buying the Legends Throne. It's the only way to really keep up with the game. I don't care if you can grind to make it whatever. A fucking competitive game we have to grind to get all the characters is about as dumb as unlocking fighting game characters in an old-ass fighting game that you actually use to unlock content, except there wasn't some online nonsense. I guess the only modern-day equivalent of that is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, but oh wait, that game's netcode is fucking garbage, and you need to buy an extra accessory to even get Ethernet wiring, which is dumb. Why are people so hell-bent on changing their perspective on things because X publisher or whatever decided to do something good for once, and yet this is why you people keep getting shit like this. I'm not even kidding. I don't know why people are like this. It's just honestly fucking stupid, honestly. Alright, that's all for today.